I'm a member of the Baha'i faith. My family is as well. My parents were Baha'is. I've got aunts and uncles, and my wife and son. And I kept hearing about this, and the more I learned, the more my eyes were opened to this fact that there's 300,000 people that believe a certain thing, a very peaceful religion that just wants harmony between the races and equality of men and women, and peace and love and unity on earth and all of that kind of stuff. 300,000 in Iran unable to get an education, and there have been all kinds of persecutions against the Baha'is in Iran from the get-go. Tens of thousands were put to death, and after the Iranian Revolution, they were just simply kill Baha'is, but there was such an international outcry that they decided to use all these other measures to try and just kind of quash the Baha'i community. And it really opened my eyes when I thought about this as a human rights issue, because we think about certain kind of inalienable human rights, but the right to get an education, if you want to get an education, and you have the ability and the means and the wherewithal to get an education. I keep thinking here we are in Boston and all these amazing universities here. It's really a center of learning for the world, maybe the preeminent city of learning in the entire world. And could you imagine if the US government hated Buddhists, and you were a Buddhist, and you went and you applied at BU, and they're like, you're a Buddhist, no way. And then you went to Harvard, you went to BC, you couldn't even go to community college up the road. No place would allow you. And so then you get together with your other Buddhist friends and start, get some borrowed textbooks and labs and start working, and then and not only that, you're arrested, and the teachers that are helping you are arrested and put into prison. It's a mind-boggling thing. We take our education here really for granted in the United States, and I believe that education it's not just a nice thing to get a job. It's an important part of being a human being. It's what makes us who we are. It's good for our hearts and our minds and our souls. And I have a 7-year-old son, and I think about his education and how if we lived in Iran, if by chance, circumstance, we were Iranians and born in Iran, that he couldn't learn.
Behind the scenes, it's interesting. It was so inspiring to work on a project like this. Any project you start is a little daunting at the beginning, and you wonder, well, how am I going to do certain things? In this case, we couldn't go to Iran, and yet we wanted to bring alive the people and the work, and just so many things came together. Working with David was wonderful, having guidance from so many tremendous people, getting to know people like Moshe and her husband Nikon, who just blow you away with their good hearts and their willingness to cooperate. But we also had this miraculous thing happen, we need footage from Iran, and there's a guy you saw in the film named Pedro, Roshan, and he would send emails to people he knew, Baha'is and non-Baha'is. He had a lot of Muslim friends in Iran who were helping us. And we'd send off wish lists of shots, can we get a shot inside a class, people working together, or can we get a shot of panning down the street at night and moving up to an actual BIHE locked door. It's a pretty specific thing. Or, hey Pedro, can we get shots of recreating your trip from Sari to Tehran, but please don't get the guys arrested doing it. And 3 days later, the footage was shown via an email. It was an amazing thing. So it's behind the scenes, but it also just touches you by this spirit. The fact that we can connect to Iran, they can connect to us, and we can, without sounding too sappy, almost become, we can also become family in this effort. It's a tremendous thing, and it shows the bonds that we have, the responsibility that we have, and how we can work together. If we can do this, we can do almost anything. I was just thinking about one person who's sort of been with us, but hasn't been with us the whole process. You mentioned people who were arrested. The first interview I did was with Kayvon Muhammad Hassan, who you may remember in the black coat. He's married to Manya. And he talked about this one teacher who changed his life, Mr. Badawan. Just a remarkable person. And the weird thing was, wherever I traveled, people would say, oh, I know Mr. Badawan. I wouldn't even bring it up. They would just know this man, and they were touched by his spirit. And he was one of the people who was arrested in May 2011. We'd see his face in the photographs, we'd think about him. And let's think about it right now, because right this very second, he is in a prison cell. right this very second. And right this very second, his family in Iran is suffering and worried about him. So he was sort of present throughout the whole process, and literally after we locked the film, we had to open the film up because we found out that he'd been sentenced to 5 years in prison, along with his other colleagues. So now he faces at least 5 years in prison, simply for trying to teach. It's those personal connections that connect us to what it's all about, and it's what should motivate us all to keep working on behalf of this project.
You know, we all decide, we choose to be Baha'i, so this is our faith. And as such, our faith defines who we are. So it's a question of identity. And if you're asked about your identity, and you are pretty certain that this is who you want to be, then you weigh your options. Do you lie about who you are, or you stay true to yourself? So that's why Baha'is do not lie on applications. And school is only one part of it. We cannot obtain jobs with the public sector. Anything that's related to the government, Baha'is cannot be employed. And many hundreds and thousands have been expelled from their jobs. And in many other instances, Baha'is are asked to identify their faith, and we just do not lie because that's who we are and that's what we stand for, the principles of the Baha'i faith that defines us. And as a question of why we don't, leave, I mean, it's funny that you asked me this question because I've left. I left, but well, I want to say that I can talk on behalf of many of my friends who have left, and we are all very willing to go back and serve our country. There have been a number of occasions where I've been asked by the government of Iran, without knowing, because I'm a social worker and we have trainings to deal with disasters. I have particular training, so when we had like major earthquakes and things, I was invited to go to help in the aftermath of the earthquakes, and the minute they found out I was a Baha'i, even though I was volunteering my service, they told me that I was not allowed to go back. So we are willing to serve because service is a very important component of the Baha'i faith. And for those who stay behind, we love our country and we love our people. Even though there is oppression and discrimination by the government and its policies, it doesn't mean that we are not hopeful about the future of this country and its people. So Baha'is persevere and they have hope. That's why they remain behind.
I have to say, keep in mind, our relationship with Iran is quite fraught right now. Obviously, going back to the Carter administration, when hostages were taken, and now there's considerable tension over the development of a nuclear device in Iran. So our State Department regularly follows and monitors human rights in Iran, and every year in February and March, as part of the country reports, which we issue on every member state of the UN, except the US, by the way, it's quite clear a whole range of human rights violations are identified, highlighted, as including repression of the Baha'i. That's in the U.S. country reports, which is easy to find on the website. But given the broader issues and far more dangerous issues that are now on the table, I'm not sure that you can expect the U.S. government to have much traction with the government of Iran if it were to be a leading voice in defense of human rights or in defense of human rights of Baha'i. Maybe if the European Union were to speak out, or other countries with better relations, at least more ongoing relations, that would have greater effect. Please.
There have been some congressional declarations. I just want to note, of course, that relations are fraught because of mistakes and worse on both sides. So there's a gulf to bridge on both sides. But there have been also some international statements that have been really moving. A group of, I think, 246 academics, non-Baha'is, who wrote a joint statement. They were all Iranian expatriates who wrote a statement addressing the crimes against the Baha'is. And most recently, in connection to the Education Under Fire campaign, Nobel Peace Prize laureate President Ramos Horta of East Timor, and Bishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa wrote a joint statement calling for the world to acknowledge the human rights and educational rights of the Baha'is in Iran. It's a very moving statement, and you can read it on the Education Under Fire website. And you can sign on to it, so you can be a close buddy of Desmond Tutu. So please go take a look at it. It's worth seeing.
Good question. How do you answer that? I mean, Baha'is are not involved in partisan politics, so Baha'is don't form political parties and raise money and campaign and work in politics that way. That's not to say that Baha'is are politically inactive, because Baha'is are very much for social justice and very much standing up for their own rights and the rights of other people that have been oppressed, and will use any force to, to make that happen. Even protesting, writing letters, different kinds of campaigns, and using the political processes that are in place in various states to try and achieve social justice. But they just don't work in terms of a political system.
It would be extremely dangerous for them to formally voice their opinions, but more and more, as we saw from the very early days of this revolution, that there have been many Muslim friends that have been supportive of the Baha'is and their plight. And now today we see a new level of awareness in the Iranian community. But for them to do that, they can very easily get the death penalty for formally standing up for the right of the Baha'is. But I have known of people who did not apply to go to university just because their Baha'i friends could not do that. So you see this level of solidarity, and that's really to be commended.
Thank you. So our last question is addressed to Rain. What's the takeaway from the film in terms of what students can practically do? What are the next steps? How can we take our feelings around this issue and move forward?
Sure, good question. I just want to say on the Muslim issue one more time is that this film in no way paints a portrait, and I hope we're not painting a portrait where it's like Muslims versus Baha'is in Iran. That's not the case. I don't know the numbers, but I would guess the majority of the Muslims in Iran are just fine with Baha'is being there and living peacefully and getting education and having jobs. This is really about this theocracy. It's a theocracy that runs the country and their policies more than looking at Muslim-Baha'i relations. But check out educationunderfire.com. There's a lot of calls to action there. There's this letter that Jeff mentioned that was signed by the two Nobel laureates that calls for a number of different calls to action. One is, contacting your local representative, and you make your position clear to them that they should support the rights of Baha'is in Iran, especially the rights to get an education and the BIHE. There's one thing that's very important, and I think BU does this already, and like Mojde said, BU is at the vanguard of this, is getting credits for people that have graduated from the BIHE. So contacting your teachers or your deans at whatever university, I think you're all BU students, but just supporting BU in offering credits to the BIHE is very important. But if you have contacts at other universities, we need to increase the number of universities that will give credits. And finally, finding educators that are willing to teach. It seems like the BIHE is moving more towards the internet, and so people can teach from international schools, and finding teachers and professors that can contribute in that way. Anything I'm leaving out, Jeff?
I think you were correct.
Oh, thanks.
Just want to ask you or challenge you, each one of you, to take action today. Do something, even if that means signing onto the letter, or deciding that you're going to talk to a professor, or you will make an appointment with your dean. Do not leave this room without promising yourself that you're going to do something about this issue.
Wait 1 second.
Someone once defined the work of Amnesty International as mobilizing people of conscience in defense of prisoners of conscience. So there are ways to be active, whether it's joining Amnesty International, going to the website of Education Under Fire, writing an appeal, getting yourself to be more educated. I'm pleased to say we have an Amnesty chapter on the campus of Boston University. We welcome your joining that chapter and being active with us as well on this issue and obviously many others that are troubling us. Thank you.
Before